Hi everybody, I have a spirit with me, a male spirit, and his name's Lionel. Lionel's telling me that he is from the United States and he used to like camping and fishing, and this is not so much hunting, but this is mainly fishing. He was a fisherman and he used to eat his catch. These are his words, not mine. And he enjoyed the outdoor lives. He was staying. Okay. He's telling me that he passed from a cancerous condition of the esophagus, which eventually spread to his lungs. And he says, I didn't smoke. He said, I didn't smoke at all. He's telling me that he was a Vietnam veteran, and that's why he preferred the outdoors. His favourite place, camping site, was a place called Stewart's Point. Right. He's saying by Lake Mead. I mean, these are his words, not mine. And he he's telling me that he went on a trip one time, and he wasn't alone. He was with his son and his buddy, as he's calling his army buddy, and they were sat outside. It was a lovely evening, he's saying, and it was crystal clear, and they were looking across the lake. He says, next thing, he said they had a campfire and everything, and they were cooking. And he says, next thing, he says he saw two craft. He says, I don't know what they were. He says there were no noise to them, but he says they were coming across up by the lake. He says they hovered slightly, and then they came near him and hovered. They didn't hover directly over him, they were near him. And he, when they went past, he says, you know, it looked like he says they were man-made. He says they weren't from another dimension or anything like that. He says they were from here. He's saying that when they were over him, he says if he started feeling sick. He says it just felt as if you were being pressed to the floor. He says you felt as if you were about 20 tons. He says and once the went, he says that it was lifted. That weight feeling was lifted. He's saying that they were disc shape. He says there were two more came after them, and they looked like a flying V shape. He says there were no lights on them whatsoever. He says but they looked darker than the sky, night sky. And they thought no more about it. He took some photographs and things, and he's saying that, but they were real black. He says they weren't just black. He says they were really black, and they thought no more about it. Anyway, the day after, they woke up and they looked as if the face had been burnt. The face was red, and he says it was all down the front here. And it had gone through his clothes, and he says that he remembers from the army they were talking about radiation sickness, and he says I don't know if it was that, but he says that's what I felt. And right, he says a year went past, maybe 2 years. He says and then all of a sudden he says I started feeling sick, ill, and he realised he couldn't breathe, properly, and he says, I've never smoked. He never smoked in his life. And he said that he went to the doctors and they diagnosed him with cancer, and he says, I got a cancerous condition over esophagus. He says, it had spread to my lungs. He says, I don't know how I contracted this, and he feels that it was contracted through the craft that came over, that hovered not directly above him but near him. He says, we just kept still. He says, because we were under a tree line. He says, so that wasn't they couldn't see us really, or we couldn't be seen. He says they could see the campfire, but he says they couldn't see really us, and he feels that that's what's happened. But he's wanting everybody to know. He says, yeah, I did go on to yeah, okay, well, he's saying extraterrestrial highway, which must be the road. It must be a road. Well, it's got to be a road, but anyway, that's what he said. He says, yeah, we did do that, just to have a look. He says, because everybody does it. He says, but he says, that were it. He says, I wasn't really interested in that. He says, I've seen enough action in Vietnam. He says, and I wasn't interested. But this is what happened. He says, I was physically fit. He says, I didn't smoke. He says, yeah, I did drink, but beers. But he says, I wasn't, I was active. He says, no, I wasn't a big guy. He says, but that's what happened to me. He says, people often wondered why he or how he contracted this illness, and now he wants to share in his story now with me, and I appreciate it. Bless you. So on that note, he's pulling away. He says, I've said my story. He says, and that's what I want everybody to know. He wants his wife to say that, to know that he still loves her and his child, his son. And he says, I'll never forget about you. He says, and I do come around you all the time. He says, I don't know if you see me, but he says, I'm glad to see that you're keeping the fishing up, which was a big thing in his life. And on that note, he is pulling away. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to everybody for watching this video, and I'll speak to you on the next one. God bless. Bye for now.